When a dedicated elementary school teacher notices a quiet student who refuses to remove her scarf despite the warm spring weather, something doesn't feel right. Before we dive into the story, let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. And if you believe in protecting the vulnerable, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that matter. At first, Ms. Harper thought it was just a phase or perhaps a cultural practice, until she found the first bruise that changed everything. Sarah Harper walked the quiet, empty hallways of Westbrook Elementary after the final bell had rung. 28 years of teaching third grade had given her an instinct about children, something beyond what textbooks could teach. The walls of her classroom were adorned with bright artwork and motivational posters, a stark contrast to the unease brewing inside her. She collected forgotten lunch boxes and stray pencils, the mundane routine usually calming her at day's end. But today, her thoughts kept returning to Lily Chun, the transfer student who joined her class 3 weeks ago. Quiet and withdrawn, Lily always wore a colorful scarf wrapped high around her neck. Always, even during gym class, even as April temperatures climbed unseasonably high. This morning, something had shifted. When Sarah asked Lily to remove her scarf during art class, purely out of concern the fabric might get paint on it, the girl's eyes had widened with unmistakable fear. "I can't," Lily had whispered, fingers clutching the fabric tighter. "My dad says I have to keep it on." Sarah sighed, dropping a misplaced math worksheet into her desk drawer. She'd seen concerning behaviors before in her long career and had made 3 calls to Child Protective Services over the years. Each time had been gut-wrenching but necessary. Each time, she'd questioned whether she was overreacting. Her colleague and closest friend at the school, Diane Myers, the school counselor, often told her, "You have good instincts, Sarah. Trust them." Diane had been at Westbrook even longer than Sarah, 32 years now, and had become Sarah's sounding board for difficult situations. The school principal, Dr. Walter Reynolds, passed by her open door. "Heading out soon, Sarah?" he asked, briefcase in hand, his tie already loosened at the neck. "Don't work too late. We've got that staff meeting first thing tomorrow." "Just finishing up," she replied with a practiced smile. Dr. Reynolds nodded and continued down the hall. He was respected within the district, known for running a tight ship while still advocating for both students and teachers. But like all administrators, he was constantly balancing educational priorities against budget constraints and district politics. Sarah gathered her tote bag and keys, deciding to stop by Diane's office before leaving. As she walked through the corridor, she passed the nurse's office, momentarily recalling how Lily had flinched when Nurse Patterson attempted a routine height and weight check last week. Diane was typing on her computer when Sarah knocked on her open door. "Got a minute?" Sarah asked. "For you? Always," Diane said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. "What's on your mind?" Sarah settled into the chair. "It's about Lily Chun, the new girl in my class. The one with the scarves, right?" Diane nodded. "I noticed that too. She refuses to take it off. Says her dad insists she wear it. And today in art class she seemed scared at the suggestion of removing it." Diane leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. "Has she shown any other concerning behaviors?" "She's withdrawn, doesn't socialize much with the other kids, startles easily, constantly checking the clock before dismissal, like she's anxious about going home." "Classic anxiety indicators," Diane agreed. "Have you met the parents?" "Just the father. Mother hasn't been to any meetings. Mr. Chun came for registration, but he was terse. Said he traveled frequently for business, and that they'd moved from Boston after his wife's death." "Her mother's deceased?" Diane's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's what he said." But Sarah hesitated, feeling uncomfortable putting her vague suspicions into words. "But your teacher radar is pinging," Diane finished for her. "Something just feels off. I can't explain it." "Those instincts are usually worth paying attention to," Diane said. "Here's what I suggest. Document everything you're noticing. Dates, specific behaviors, quotes if possible. I can check her transfer records more thoroughly, maybe reach out to her previous school in Boston." Sarah nodded, feeling slightly better having shared her concerns. And Sarah, Diane added, remember we're mandated reporters. If you see anything at all that suggests abuse, we don't need proof. Just reasonable suspicion. I know, Sarah said quietly. I just hope I'm wrong. As she drove home to her small but comfortable house, Sarah couldn't shake the image of Lily's frightened eyes. The girl was bright, turned in impeccable homework, but barely spoke unless directly addressed. Sarah lived alone since her divorce 12 years ago. Her daughter, Emma, was now in college across the country. Her house often felt too quiet, the silence sometimes overwhelming after days surrounded by energetic 8-year-olds. Tonight, she reheated leftover pasta and graded papers at her kitchen table, but her concentration kept slipping. She found herself staring at Lily's math worksheet. The answers were all correct, the handwriting meticulous, too perfect for a typical third grader, as if mistakes weren't allowed. That night, Sarah fell into a troubled sleep, dreams filled with scarves that tightened around necks until they left marks that couldn't be hidden. The next morning arrived with heavy spring rain that matched Sarah's mood. She arrived early, preparing for the day while watching raindrops race down the classroom windows. Students began trickling in, hanging wet jackets and shaking umbrellas. Lily arrived precisely 5 minutes before the bell, as always. Her dark hair was neatly combed, school uniform pristine despite the downpour. And around her neck, a deep purple scarf was wrapped meticulously, covering her from chin to collarbone. "Good morning, Lily," Sarah greeted warmly. "Did you stay dry in all this rain?" "Yes, Ms. Harper," Lily replied softly, eyes downcast. "My dad has an umbrella." "That's good. Why don't you get settled? And we'll start with silent reading this morning." Throughout the morning, Sarah found her gaze repeatedly drawn to Lily. The girl was diligent, focused on each task with unusual intensity for someone so young. During math lesson, while helping another student, Sarah noticed Lily absently touch her neck when she thought no one was watching, a fleeting grimace of discomfort crossing her face. At lunch, Sarah made her way to the cafeteria, spotting Lily sitting alone at the end of a table. Making a casual approach, she sat down across from the girl. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, unwrapping her own lunch. Lily shook her head, eyes widening slightly at the unexpected company. "That looks delicious," Sarah commented, nodding at Lily's carefully packed lunch. Rice, vegetables, and what appeared to be homemade dumplings were arranged in separate compartments. "My dad makes it," Lily said quietly. "He says I need to eat healthy food." Sarah noticed that despite the appetizing appearance, Lily had barely touched her meal. "Aren't you hungry today?" Lily shrugged, then winced slightly at the movement. "Are you feeling okay, Lily? You seem uncomfortable." "I'm fine," the girl answered too quickly, pulling her scarf tighter. "Just tired." "You know, it's pretty warm in the building today," Sarah ventured carefully. "You might be more comfortable if you loosened your scarf a little." Panic flashed across Lily's face. "No, I can't. I promised my dad." "Why is it so important to your dad that you wear the scarf, Lily?" The girl looked down at her lap. He says I get sick easily, and my neck needs to stay warm." The explanation sounded rehearsed, delivered with the flat cadence of memorized lines. "Even when it's warm outside, like today." Lily nodded emphatically. "Especially then, because of air conditioning." Before Sarah could probe further, the lunch bell rang. Lily quickly packed up her barely touched lunch and hurried away, leaving Sarah with more questions than answers. That afternoon, during physical education, Sarah watched from the sidelines as the children played a modified game of basketball in the gym. Most were dressed in the school's PE uniform, navy shorts and light blue t-shirts. Lily wore the same, but with her scarf still firmly in place, despite the obvious discomfort it caused while running. PE teacher Mark Donovan approached Sarah, wiping sweat from his brow. "That new girl in your class," he said quietly. "What's with the scarf?" "I'm not sure," Sarah replied honestly. "Family preference, apparently." Well, it's a safety hazard during physical activity. I've asked her twice now to remove it during class, and she flat out refuses. Says her father would be upset. Has she participated normally otherwise? That's another thing, Mark frowned. She sits out half the activities, claims she has a doctor's note about exertion. But Nurse Patterson hasn't received any documentation. Sarah watched as Lily stood to the side while other children took their turns shooting baskets. The girl's posture was rigid, her eyes constantly darting to the gym entrance as if expecting someone to appear. I'll talk to her, Sarah promised. When the students returned to the classroom, flushed and energized from physical activity, Sarah noticed Lily moving more stiffly than before. During the transition to their science lesson, she quietly approached the girl's desk. Lily, could you help me organize the science materials for a moment? She asked, providing a pretext for private conversation. At the supply cabinet, Sarah spoke gently. Is everything okay at home, Lily? The girl nodded vigorously, eyes focused on sorting colored pencils. You know, if something is bothering you, if you're worried or scared about anything, you can always talk to me. Or Ms. Myers, the counselor. Lily's hands froze momentarily. Why would I be scared? The question hung in the air, neither accusation nor denial. Sometimes, Sarah chose her words carefully, people might tell us to keep secrets that shouldn't be kept, especially if those secrets involve someone hurting us. Lily's breathing quickened, her small hands now clutching a red pencil so tightly that Sarah feared it might snap. No one's hurting me, she whispered, but her voice wavered. I'm glad to hear that, Sarah said, though doubt gnawed at her. But hypothetically, if someone was, that wouldn't be your fault. And telling a trusted adult would be the right thing to do. Lily remained silent, organizing pencils with mechanical precision. One more thing, Sarah added. I noticed you seemed uncomfortable in PE today. Are you feeling all right physically? Just sore muscles, Lily replied, too quickly. From exercises my dad makes me do. The vague explanation only deepened Sarah's concern. The rest of the afternoon passed uneventfully. When the dismissal bell rang, Sarah observed Lily gathering her belongings with the same careful precision that characterized everything she did. Unlike most children who rushed eagerly toward freedom, Lily moved methodically, as if delaying the inevitable. Have a good evening, Lily, Sarah called as the girl headed for the door. Lily paused momentarily. You too, Ms. Harper, something in her tone, a wistfulness, perhaps, tugged at Sarah's heart. After the last student departed, Sarah immediately went to Diane's office, relieved to find her still there. I need your input, she said without preamble, closing the door behind her. Diane listened intently as Sarah recounted her observations and conversations, her frown deepening as the details accumulated. You're right to be concerned, Diane confirmed when Sarah finished. These are textbook warning signs. The isolation, the physical discomfort, the rigid adherence to the father's rules, the rehearsed explanations. So what do we do? Sarah asked. I don't have definitive proof of anything. We don't need proof, remember? Just reasonable suspicion, which I'd say we have. Diane tapped her pen against her desk. But these cases are delicate. If we call CPS now with what we have, they'll likely do a home visit. If Mr. Chan is indeed abusive, he might remove Lily from school, maybe even leave the area. So we wait for more evidence? That feels wrong if she's being hurt. Not wait passively, Diane clarified. Actively monitor and document. Try to build rapport with Lily, create a safe space where she might eventually disclose. And I'll expedite my background check into the family. Sarah nodded, though the plan felt insufficient against her growing sense of foreboding. I did make some initial calls today, Diane added. Her previous school in Boston has no record of a Lily Chan in the past 3 years. What? Sarah straightened. But Mr. Chan specifically said they moved from Boston. Either he lied, or they used a different name there, Diane said grimly. Neither option is reassuring. The next day brought unseasonably hot weather, the temperature climbing toward 85 degrees by mid-morning. The school's aging air conditioning struggled to keep up, leaving the classrooms warm and stuffy. Children fidgeted at their desks, faces flushed with heat. Everyone except Lily, who maintained her perfect posture despite the purple scarf still wound tightly around her neck. Small beads of sweat formed on her forehead, but she made no move to remove or even loosen the fabric. During their morning bathroom break, Sarah noticed Lily standing at the sink, staring at her reflection. As Sarah watched discreetly from near the doorway, Lily carefully adjusted her scarf, momentarily exposing a sliver of skin beneath. Sarah caught a glimpse of something dark against the pale skin before Lily hastily covered it again, her small fingers trembling slightly. Sarah's heart pounded. She was almost certain she'd seen bruising. Back in the classroom, she found it increasingly difficult to focus on the lesson, her mind replaying that brief glimpse over and over. Was it a bruise? Or could it have been a birthmark? A shadow? She needed to be certain. During lunch, Sarah sought out Nurse Patterson in the clinic. "Janet, has Lily Chun from my class ever come to see you? Complained of any injuries or illnesses?" The nurse shook her head. "Not once. Why do you ask?" "I'm concerned about possible physical abuse," Sarah said quietly, though they were alone in the office. "She wears a scarf constantly, refuses to remove it. I think I may have seen bruising underneath." Nurse Patterson's expression grew serious. "That would explain a few things. During her entrance screening, she wouldn't let me examine her properly. Said her father had documentation of a recent physical, but it never materialized. Could you request to examine her? Maybe say it's a routine follow-up?" "I could try, but I can't force an examination without parent permission unless it's an emergency." Janet hesitated. "You know we're mandated reporters, Sarah. If you suspect abuse—" "I know," Sarah interrupted, "but we're gathering more information first. Diane is already involved." By mid-afternoon, the classroom had become stifling despite the laboring air conditioner. Several students had asked permission to get water or step into the hallway for relief from the heat. During their science activity, creating simple electrical circuits, Sarah noticed Lily looking increasingly pale, dark circles prominent beneath her eyes. As the children worked in pairs, Sarah circulated through the classroom, offering assistance. When she reached Lily's desk, she found the girl struggling to connect wires with trembling hands. "Are you feeling okay, Lily?" she asked gently. "You look a little unwell." "I'm fine," Lily murmured, but her voice sounded faint. "You know, it's very hot today. Everyone's taking off their sweaters and rolling up sleeves. I think it would be okay for you to loosen your scarf a little, just while you're in the classroom." Panic flashed in Lily's eyes. "No, I can't. My dad will check. He always checks." The comment sent a chill through Sarah despite the room's warmth. "Checks what, Lily?" But Lily had already turned back to her circuit, shoulders hunched defensively. Sarah made a mental note to document the comment. She'd been keeping meticulous records of every concerning statement or behavior, compiling what was becoming a substantial file in her desk drawer. 20 minutes before dismissal, as students worked on independent reading, a commotion broke out at the drinking fountain just outside the classroom door. Sarah stepped into the hallway to investigate, finding two fourth-graders arguing over whose turn it was. By the time she returned, less than 2 minutes later, she immediately sensed something wrong. Lily's desk was empty, her book abandoned mid-page. "Has anyone seen where Lily went?" she asked the class. "Bathroom, I think," offered Madison, who sat nearest the door. Sarah hurried to the girls' bathroom down the hall. "Lily, are you in here?" A faint sound came from the last stall, a muffled sob. "Lily, it's Ms. Harper. Are you okay?" No response, just another quiet sniff. "I'm coming in, okay?" Sarah pushed gently on the stall door, finding it unlocked. Inside, Lily sat on the closed toilet lid, her face tear-streaked and frightened. But what seized Sarah's attention was the loosened scarf, and what it revealed. Dark, unmistakable bruising encircled the child's neck, fingerprint patterns clearly visible against her pale skin. Some areas were yellowish-green, healing. Others were fresh and purple. Multiple layers of abuse inflicted over time. Sarah couldn't suppress her sharp intake of breath. "Oh, Lily." The girl's hands flew to her neck, frantically trying to cover the evidence. "Please don't look. Please don't tell." He said no one could see. Sarah knelt down, bringing herself to eye level with the terrified child. "Lily, did your father do this to you?" Tears overflowed as Lily nodded almost imperceptibly. "When?" "Last night," she whispered, "because I got paint on my worksheet." Cold fury washed through Sarah, followed immediately by focused resolve. "This ended today. Lily, listen to me very carefully," she said, keeping her voice calm despite the storm inside her. "What your father is doing is wrong. It's against the law. No one is allowed to hurt you like this, for any reason. But he says I'm bad, that I deserve it." "No child deserves to be hurt," Sarah said firmly. "And you are not bad, Lily. You're a wonderful, bright, good girl." Lily's lower lip trembled. "He'll be so angry if he finds out I showed someone." "He won't hurt you again," Sarah promised, a promise she intended to keep at all costs. "But I need to get help from other adults whose job it is to protect children. Will you trust me?" After a long moment, Lily gave a small nod. "I'm going to take you to Nurse Patterson first, okay? Then we'll talk to Ms. Myers." Sarah sent a quick text to Diane. "Emergency. Meeting in nurse's office now. Bring CPS contact info." Then escorted Lily through mercifully empty hallways to the clinic. Janet Patterson's professional demeanor slipped momentarily when she saw Lily's neck, eyes widening before she composed herself. "Hello, Lily," she said gently. "Ms. Harper says you're not feeling well. Let's take a look, shall we?" While the nurse conducted a thorough examination, documenting each injury with clinical precision and gentle hands, Sarah stepped outside to call her classroom, arranging for her teaching assistant to handle dismissal. Diane arrived moments later, her face grave after Sarah briefly explained the situation. Inside the examination room, Nurse Patterson had covered Lily with a blanket, though the day remained warm. Shock, Sarah realized. The child was in shock. "Lily has multiple bruises consistent with manual strangulation," Janet reported quietly, leading the two other women slightly away from where Lily sat. "Various stages of healing. Some are at least a week old. There are also partially healed welts on her back consistent with belt strikes." Sarah closed her eyes briefly, struggling to contain her anger and heartbreak. "I've taken photographs for documentation," Janet continued. "This is unequivocal physical abuse requiring immediate intervention." Diane already had her phone out. "I'm calling CPS emergency response. They'll need to come immediately and implement a safety plan." She glanced at the clock. "Dismissal is in 10 minutes. If the father is expecting to pick her up." "He doesn't." Lily spoke up unexpectedly, her voice small but clear. "He never picks me up. I walk home. 3 blocks. He says exercise is important." The three women exchanged glances, this new information adding another concerning layer. "He works from home," Lily added. "Always home when I get there." Diane made the call, speaking in rapid, professional tones, relaying the situation's urgency. When she disconnected, her expression was resolute. "They're sending someone now, but they've also contacted police to meet us here. Given the severity and the risk of the father fleeing with her, they're implementing emergency protective custody." Sarah sat beside Lily, who had begun to tremble again. "Lily, some people are coming to help make sure you're safe. They're going to ask you some questions about your dad and what happens at home. It's really important that you tell them the truth, even if it's scary." "Where will I go?" Lily asked, fear edging her voice. "To a safe place," Sarah assured her, though her heart ached at the unknowns facing this child. "With people whose only job is to keep children safe." "Will you come with me?" The question pierced Sarah's heart. "I'll stay with you as long as they let me. I promise." The next hour unfolded in a blur of activity. A CPS caseworker arrived, Elizabeth Morgan, a woman Sarah had worked with on previous cases, followed shortly by 2 police officers. They established a makeshift command center in the conference room adjacent to the principal's office, where Dr. Reynolds had joined the growing circle of concerned adults. Lily, remarkably, found courage as events progressed. With Sarah beside her, holding her hand, she answered questions with increasing steadiness, revealing a home life of terrifying unpredictability and cruelty. Her father, she explained, punished her for the smallest infractions. A misplaced toy, a spilled drink, homework that wasn't perfect. The strangulation had begun 3 months ago. After her mother had gone away, Sarah noted that Lily never specifically said her mother had died, only that she had gone somewhere she couldn't come back from. As Lily spoke, Elizabeth documented everything while Officer Garcia, a female officer with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor, knelt beside the child. "You're being very brave," Officer Garcia told her. "And what you're doing right now is helping other kids too, even though you might not realize it." "How?" Lily asked, genuine confusion crossing her face. "Because when brave kids like you tell the truth about adults who hurt them, it helps us catch those adults and stop them from hurting anyone else." A small, fragile smile touched Lily's lips, the first Sarah had ever seen from her. The investigation accelerated rapidly. A second police unit was dispatched to the Chun residence with a warrant. Background checks revealed disturbing information. James Chun wasn't the man's real name. He had at least 2 prior identities and was wanted for questioning in another state regarding the disappearance of his wife, Lily's mother. Sarah stayed beside Lily through it all, even as her own emotions churned beneath her professional exterior. When Elizabeth explained that Lily would be placed temporarily in emergency foster care, Sarah found herself speaking without premeditation. "I'm a certified foster parent," she said. "In active status since my daughter left for college, but my home study is current. I completed recertification training last summer." Elizabeth looked surprised. "You'd be willing to take emergency placement? Tonight?" "Yes," Sarah said firmly, surprising herself with how certain she felt. If Lily would be comfortable with that. They all looked at the child, who had been listening intently. "You mean, stay at your house?" Lily asked cautiously, as if afraid to believe it. "Yes, until they figure out a permanent safe place for you. It might be a few days or longer." Lily glanced between Sarah and Elizabeth. "Would I still come to school here?" "Yes," Sarah assured her. "Same school, same classroom." "Okay," Lily whispered, a world of trust in that single word. The mechanics of emergency placement required additional paperwork and approvals, but Elizabeth expedited the process, recognizing the unusual circumstances and the rapport already established between teacher and student. By early evening, news arrived that James Chun, or whatever his real name was, had been arrested at the house without incident. A thorough search was underway, with investigators particularly interested in finding information about Lily's mother. As darkness fell, Sarah found herself driving home with Lily in the back seat, a small backpack of hastily gathered belongings beside her. The girl had remained withdrawn throughout the intake process, answering questions when asked but otherwise quiet, as if conserving energy for whatever might come next. At Sarah's house, she showed Lily to the guest room, Emma's old room, redecorated after she left for college but still bearing traces of a childhood spent there. "You can make yourself comfortable," Sarah said, setting Lily's backpack on the bed. "Are you hungry? I could make some dinner." Lily shook her head. "Just tired." "That makes sense. It's been a really big day." Sarah hesitated. "Do you want to take a shower before bed? I have some clean pajamas that might fit you." For a moment, panic flashed in Lily's eyes, the prospect of removing her clothes, exposing more evidence of her father's cruelty, clearly frightening her. "You don't have to," Sarah added quickly, "and I won't look. But sometimes hot water helps when your body is sore." After a moment's consideration, Lily nodded. Sarah showed her the bathroom, provided towels and a set of Emma's old pajamas that she'd kept in a drawer. I'll be right in the kitchen if you need anything. Take your time. While Lily showered, Sarah made a simple meal of toast and scrambled eggs, unsure what the child might prefer but guessing that comfort food might be welcome. She also called Diane, updating her on the situation and confirming logistical details for the coming days. When Lily emerged, she looked transformed, smaller somehow without the protective layers she'd worn all day, but also unburdened, her wet hair hanging loose around her face. The pajamas were too large, sleeves rolled up multiple times, but she didn't seem to mind. Most strikingly, her neck was fully visible now, the pattern of bruises starkly apparent against her skin. Sarah managed not to react, though the sight renewed her anger toward the man who had inflicted such pain. "Hungry after all?" she asked instead, gesturing to the plate she'd prepared. To her surprise, Lily nodded, climbing onto a kitchen stool and taking small, careful bites of the scrambled eggs. They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes before Lily spoke unexpectedly. "My mom didn't die," she said, eyes fixed on her plate. Sarah set down her fork, giving the child her full attention. "She didn't." Lily shook her head. "Dad tells everyone she did, but I heard them fighting that night." He was choking her, like he does to me. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "She was making sounds like I make." Then she stopped making sounds. Cold horror washed through Sarah. She chose her next words with extreme care. "Did you see what happened after that?" "I was hiding. Dad found me watching and got really mad. The next day he said Mom had gone on a trip. Then later he said she died in an accident." Lily looked up, her eyes haunted with a knowledge no child should possess. "But I think he hurt her too much and she couldn't wake up. Then he made her disappear." Sarah felt physically ill but maintained her composure for Lily's sake. "Thank you for telling me. That was very brave. We need to tell Officer Garcia about this tomorrow. Okay?" Lily nodded solemnly, then asked with childlike directness, "Am I in trouble for knowing?"
No, sweetheart.
"You're not in trouble at all. You're helping the police understand what happened." Sarah hesitated, then added gently, "Sometimes grown-ups do terrible things, and they lie about them because they know what they did was wrong. Your dad knew hurting your mom was wrong, just like he knew hurting you was wrong. Then why did he do it?" The simple question held such profound weight. "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "Some people have something broken inside them that makes them hurt others. But what matters now is that he can't hurt you anymore." After dinner, she helped Lily settle into bed, leaving a night light on at the child's request. "Ms. Harper," Lily called as Sarah reached the doorway. "Will they find my mom?" The question broke Sarah's heart. "I don't know, sweetie, but the police will look very hard for her." "Okay." Lily's voice was small in the dimly lit room. "Good night." "Good night, Lily. I'm just down the hall if you need anything." As Sarah prepared for bed herself, her phone rang. Elizabeth Morgan, the CPS caseworker. "I wanted to update you," Elizabeth said without preamble. "The police found evidence at the Chun house. Photos of the mother, identification documents under several names, and disturbing evidence in the basement." She paused. "They're bringing in cadaver dogs tomorrow." Sarah closed her eyes, thinking of Lily just down the hall. "She told me tonight that she witnessed her father assaulting her mother. She believes he killed her." Elizabeth sighed heavily. "Based on what they've found so far, that's looking increasingly likely. The detectives want to interview her again tomorrow, with a child psychologist present." "Will she have to testify? Go through a trial?" "Too soon to know. But given the evidence they're finding, they may be able to build a case without putting her through that." After they hung up, Sarah sat on the edge of her bed, overwhelmed by the day's events. In the space of hours, her concern for a quiet student had evolved into uncovering what appeared to be a horrific domestic situation, possibly a homicide. And now, somehow, that same student was sleeping in her guest room. A temporary arrangement that already felt significant, as if invisible lines of connection were being drawn between them. Sarah's last thought before drifting into exhausted sleep was of Lily's small, tentative smile when Officer Garcia had called her brave. That smile felt like the first tender shoot breaking through soil after a long winter, fragile, but resilient in its determination to reach toward light. The next morning, Sarah woke early, momentarily disoriented by the knowledge that she wasn't alone in the house. She found Lily already awake, sitting cross-legged on the guest bed, looking through a picture book from the room's bookshelf. "Good morning," Sarah greeted her. "Did you sleep okay?" Lily nodded. "This was your daughter's room." "Yes, Emma's. She's in college now, studying to be a veterinarian." "There are a lot of books," Lily observed, gesturing to the packed bookshelf. "Emma loves reading. You can borrow any books you like while you're here." After breakfast, Sarah drove them to the police station where Detective Rodriguez, Officer Garcia, and a gentle-voiced psychologist named Dr. Price awaited them. Lily, initially apprehensive, grew calmer as Dr. Price explained the process, assuring her she could take breaks whenever needed. Sarah remained present throughout the interview, watching with profound respect as Lily recounted, haltingly at first, then with growing certainty, the events surrounding her mother's disappearance and the months of abuse that followed. The child's recall was detailed in a way that made the accounts undeniably credible. "You're helping us solve a very important case," Detective Rodriguez told her when they finished. "Because of your courage, your father can't hurt anyone else." Afterward, Elizabeth met them with news that prompted mixed emotions. James Chun had confessed to killing Lily's mother, whose real name was Grace Lynn, after investigators confronted him with evidence from the basement. He was being charged with murder, child abuse, false imprisonment, and multiple other felonies. "He'll never be able to hurt Lily again," Elizabeth assured Sarah privately while Lily was coloring in the station's waiting area. "But the case brings complications for her placement. With no known relatives, she'll enter the foster system permanently, likely with adoption as the goal." Sarah found herself watching Lily, head bent in concentration over her drawing, the bruises on her neck visible but already beginning to fade slightly. Something powerful and protective stirred within her. "I'd like to keep her," she said, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. "Not just emergency placement. I'd like to be considered for long-term fostering, possibly adoption if that becomes appropriate." Elizabeth studied her carefully. "That's a significant commitment, Sarah. Are you sure? You've known her as a student for less than a month." "Sometimes you just know," Sarah replied simply. "My house has been too quiet since Emma left. And Lily deserves stability, someone who already cares about her. She shouldn't have to adjust to another new environment after everything she's been through." "It's not an impossible path," Elizabeth acknowledged. "But there would be thorough assessments, home studies, court appearances." "I understand. I'm prepared for whatever process is necessary." By early afternoon, they were back at school where Diane had arranged for Lily to spend time with her while Sarah taught her afternoon classes. When Sarah collected her after the final bell, Lily was sitting in Diane's office, a small collection of construction paper creations spread before her. "Ms. Myers helped me make cards," Lily explained, showing Sarah a colorful drawing of what appeared to be two figures. One tall, one small, holding hands beside a house. "They're beautiful," Sarah said, her throat tightening unexpectedly. As they drove home, Lily grew quiet again, gazing out the window at the familiar neighborhood that had taken on new significance now that she was experiencing it as a resident rather than just a student passing through. "Is something on your mind?" Sarah asked gently. Lily continued staring out the window for a moment before answering. "Ms. Morgan said my dad admitted hurting my mom. That means they found out the truth, right?" "Yes, that's right. And he's going to jail for a long time." "Yes, he is." Lily nodded, seeming to process this information. "Then what happens to me?" Sarah chose her words carefully. "For now, you'll stay with me while Ms. Morgan and other people work on finding the best permanent home for you." "Could I?" Lily hesitated, then continued in a rush. "Could I stay with you? Forever?" The question, so direct and hopeful, pierced straight to Sarah's heart. "Would you want that?" she asked softly. Lily nodded, her expression serious. "You're nice. And your house has books. And you noticed when something was wrong. Such simple criteria, yet they revealed volumes about what this child had been missing: basic kindness, intellectual nurturing, attentive care. I would like that very much, Sarah told her honestly. I've already talked to Ms. Morgan about the possibility. There are lots of steps we'd need to go through, but I'm willing if you are. For the second time, Sarah witnessed Lily's smile, still tentative, but broader than before, reaching her eyes this time. Really? Really? That evening, they prepared dinner together. A simple pasta dish that Lily helped stir while standing on a kitchen chair. Sarah noticed that the girl seemed incrementally more relaxed, her movements less guarded, her voice occasionally rising above a whisper. As they ate, Sarah broached a delicate subject. Lily, Nurse Patterson gave me some special cream for the bruises on your neck. It might help them feel better and heal faster. Would it be okay if I put some on after dinner? Lily's hand instinctively went to her neck, but after a moment she nodded. Later, as Sarah gently applied the medicinal cream, she was struck by the trust this simple act represented. Lily allowing her to touch the very area that had been so violently abused, permitting care instead of harm. Does that feel okay? Sarah asked, finishing with the lightest touch. It's cold, but it doesn't hurt, Lily replied. Then, unexpectedly, she added, thank you for seeing my neck that day. The simple statement carried such profound gratitude that Sarah felt momentarily overwhelmed. You're very welcome, Lily. I just wish I had noticed sooner. You noticed faster than anyone else ever did, Lily said matter-of-factly. My teachers in California never asked about my scarves. And before that, in Washington, no one said anything about the marks on my arms. Sarah absorbed this new information, evidence of a pattern of moving from place to place, of abuse continuing unchecked across state lines. Well, I'm glad I noticed when I did. As bedtime approached, Sarah helped Lily select another book from Emma's collection. A gentle story about a bird finding its way home that had been Emma's favorite at a similar age. What if I wanted to call you something else? Later, not right away. Understanding dawned. If the time comes when it feels right to you, we can talk about other options then, Sarah said carefully. There's no rush to decide anything now. Lily nodded, seeming satisfied with this answer. She settled against the pillows as Sarah began to read, the familiar story providing a gentle end to a day filled with difficult truths and new beginnings. Later that night, after Lily had fallen asleep, Sarah sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea, reflecting on the extraordinary turn her life had taken. She thought about the moment in the school bathroom when she'd first seen the bruises on Lily's neck, the horror she'd felt, followed by absolute clarity of purpose. She understood there would be challenges ahead. Lily would need extensive therapy to process her trauma. There would be bureaucratic hurdles, court appearances, possibly setbacks in the placement process. The ghost of Lily's mother, a woman she had failed to protect, would likely haunt the child's memories for years to come. But Sarah also recognized the profound privilege of being entrusted with Lily's care, even if only temporarily. Already, in the space of just days, invisible threads of connection were binding them together. Shared meals, bedtime stories, small moments of trust given and received. The next morning, as they prepared for school, Sarah noticed Lily standing before the hallway mirror, contemplating her reflection. The bruises on her neck were visible, still dark against her pale skin. Would you like a scarf to wear today? Sarah asked gently. It's okay if you do. Lily considered the question seriously, then shook her head. No, she said, her voice soft but clear. I don't need to hide anymore. In that silent exchange, Sarah understood. She hadn't just stopped the darkness. She had helped preserve a future. Recovery wouldn't be instant, but the foundation for safety had finally been laid, allowing the slow work of healing to begin. As they headed for the car, Lily reached for Sarah's hand, tiny fingers wrapping around larger ones in a gesture so natural it seemed they'd been doing it forever. And perhaps, Sarah thought with quiet hope, they would be. Stories like these remind us that sometimes, one observant person can be the difference between a child's suffering and salvation. Every day, Heroes like Ms. Harper are making these life-changing interventions. But how many signs do we miss? Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed the story, give this video a like if you haven't already, and subscribe for more powerful stories of rescue and redemption. When a school nurse notices a 6-year-old girl who refuses to remove her tights during routine health screenings, something feels wrong. Before we dive into this story, let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. And if you believe in protecting children's well-being, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that matter. At first, Linda Chun thought it was just modesty or cultural preferences, until she discovered the horrific truth that changed everything. Linda Chun adjusted her stethoscope around her neck and surveyed the organized chaos of Riverside Elementary's health clinic on this crisp October morning. The familiar scent of antiseptic mixed with the faint aroma of apple-scented hand sanitizer filled the air as she prepared for another day of caring for the school's 400 students. Sunlight streamed through the large windows she'd specifically requested when the clinic was renovated 5 years ago, creating a warm, welcoming atmosphere that helped calm nervous children. 22 years as a school nurse had taught her to read the subtle signs that distinguished normal childhood ailments from something more serious. Her clinic, painted in soft yellows and decorated with cheerful health posters featuring cartoon characters promoting good hygiene and nutrition, served as both medical facility and safe haven. The examination table was positioned near the window to take advantage of natural light, while comfortable chairs arranged in a small waiting area helped create a less clinical feel. At 55, Linda had seen it all. From routine scraped knees that required nothing more than a bandage and reassuring words, to complex medical emergencies that demanded quick thinking and immediate action. She'd comforted homesick kindergartners who missed their mothers, helped teenagers navigate the awkward health challenges of adolescence, and served as a confidential ear for students grappling with issues they couldn't discuss with parents or teachers. Her reputation among staff and students alike was one of gentle competence, someone who could extract the most stubborn splinter and provide emotional comfort with equal skill. Children who were afraid of doctors often found themselves relaxed in Linda's presence, drawn to her patient manner and genuine concern for their well-being. Teachers trusted her judgment implicitly, knowing that her years of experience had honed her ability to distinguish between children seeking attention and those facing genuine medical or emotional crises. Linda's own background contributed to her effectiveness. Born to immigrant parents who valued both education and compassion, she'd grown up understanding the complexities that shaped children's lives outside school walls. Her marriage to Robert, a pediatric social worker, had deepened her awareness of how family dynamics affected children's physical and emotional health. Their own 2 children, now grown and pursuing their own careers in helping professions, had provided her with first-hand understanding of normal child development and behavior. This morning's schedule included annual health screenings for first-grade students, a process that typically involved basic measurements, vision tests, hearing assessments, and checking for any obvious health concerns that might affect learning. Most children approached these screenings with curiosity rather than anxiety, chattering excitedly about being measured and weighed like real patients, and proudly reporting their height to anyone who would listen. The morning proceeded normally through the first several appointments. Tommy Peterson giggled when the scale's digital display showed his weight, announcing loudly that he'd grown 3 whole pounds since last year. Sophia Martinez practiced reading the eye chart aloud before her turn, wanting to make sure she performed perfectly. Jake Williams proudly showed Linda a loose tooth that was almost ready to come out, seeking her professional opinion on timeline and proper extraction technique. These routine interactions filled Linda with the quiet satisfaction that came from caring for children in her community, watching them grow and develop year after year. She knew their families, their struggles, their triumphs. Many of the current first graders had older siblings she'd cared for during their elementary years, creating a continuity of relationships that enriched her work immeasurably. The morning's rhythm changed when Emma Rodriguez arrived for her appointment. The 6-year-old entered the clinic with the careful, measured steps Linda had learned to associate with children carrying emotional burdens too heavy for their small shoulders. Unlike the previous children who'd bounded through the door with typical first-grade energy, Emma moved with deliberate precision, each step calculated and controlled. Emma's long, dark hair was neatly braided in an intricate pattern that spoke of adult attention to detail, secured with ribbon that matched her school uniform perfectly. Her navy blue dress was crisp and immaculately pressed, every button properly fastened, every fold in place. But despite her perfect appearance, her large brown eyes held a wariness that seemed inappropriate for someone so young. The hypervigilant expression Linda had learned to recognize in children who'd been forced to constantly monitor their environment for potential threats. "Good morning, Emma," Linda greeted warmly, checking her clipboard while noting the child's rigid posture and the way her small hands smoothed down her dress in what appeared to be an automatic, nervous gesture. "Are you ready for your health checkup today?" Emma nodded silently, her gaze sweeping the clinic's familiar interior as if cataloging potential escape routes or sources of danger. Linda had treated Emma for minor scrapes and a fever earlier in the school year, remembering her as a polite but reserved child who rarely spoke unless directly questioned and who seemed to weigh each word carefully before speaking. "Let's start with height and weight, shall we?" Linda gestured toward the medical scale near the window, noting how Emma's gaze immediately fixed on the bright yellow measuring tape attached to the wall. "Have you been growing lots this year? I bet you have." "I think so," Emma replied quietly, her voice barely above a whisper as she stepped carefully onto the scale. Her movements were precise, controlled in a way that struck Linda as unusual for a first grader. Most children Emma's age moved with unconscious grace, their bodies reflecting the carefree nature of childhood. Emma, by contrast, seemed to consider each motion before executing it, as if spontaneous movement might somehow result in unwanted consequences. Linda recorded Emma's measurements, noting that while the child was within normal ranges for height and weight, she appeared smaller and more fragile than her actual statistics suggested. There was something about her posture, shoulders slightly hunched, head perpetually ducked, that made her seem as if she were trying to take up as little space as possible in the world. "You've grown 2 inches since last spring," Linda reported cheerfully, hoping to elicit some enthusiasm about this normal childhood milestone. "That's excellent growth for someone your age." Emma received this information with a solemn nod rather than the pride or excitement typical children displayed when learning about their physical development. Instead, she seemed to file the information away as if it were data to be reported to someone else rather than a personal achievement to celebrate. After recording Emma's measurements, Linda moved to the vision screening station. "Now we'll check how well your eyes are working. Can you read the letters on that chart for me, starting with the biggest ones at the top?" Emma performed the vision test competently, reading each line with careful attention and perfect pronunciation. Throughout the process, Linda noticed the child's hypervigilance, constantly checking Linda's facial expressions as if monitoring for signs of displeasure or disapproval. When Emma successfully read a particularly challenging line, she looked immediately to Linda's face, not for praise, but apparently to confirm that her performance had been acceptable. "Excellent job with your letters," Linda praised, making note of Emma's perfect vision while observing the child's reaction to positive feedback. Emma's response was a barely perceptible relaxation of her shoulders, as if relief rather than pride was her primary emotion when receiving compliments. The hearing test proceeded similarly, with Emma following instructions with military precision while maintaining her constant vigilance of Linda's responses. When Linda moved a wooden block behind Emma to test her ability to locate sounds, the child's startle response was more pronounced than typical, her small body tensing as if preparing for potential threat. "Your hearing is perfect too," Linda noted, completing her documentation while preparing for the final portion of the screening. "Now I need to listen to your heart and lungs with my stethoscope, and then I'll check your skin for any unusual marks or rashes. For that part, I'll need you to remove your tights so I can examine your legs. It's just routine. All the children do this part of the screening." The change in Emma was immediate and dramatic. Her face drained of color so completely that Linda instinctively reached toward her, concerned the child might faint. Emma's small hands flew protectively to her legs, gripping the fabric of her dress as she took a step backward toward the door. "I can't," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible above the hum of the clinic's ventilation system. "My tights have to stay on." Linda had encountered modest children before, some from religious backgrounds, others simply shy about their bodies, but Emma's reaction seemed far more intense than typical childhood modesty. The fear in her eyes was unmistakable, genuine terror that seemed wildly disproportionate to the routine request. "It's okay, sweetheart," Linda assured her, deliberately keeping her voice calm and non-threatening. "I understand this might feel uncomfortable. I'm a nurse, and this is a normal part of health checkups. You can keep your underwear on. I just need to see your legs briefly to make sure your skin is healthy." "No," Emma said more firmly, wrapping her arms around herself in a protective gesture that made Linda's professional instincts sharpen further. "My grandmother says my tights protect me from germs. I'm not allowed to take them off at school. Ever." The explanation felt rehearsed, delivered with the flat, emotionless tone Linda had learned to recognize in children who'd been coached on specific responses to potential questions. The absoluteness of the restriction, "ever," was particularly concerning, suggesting a level of control that extended far beyond normal parental guidance. "That's interesting," Linda replied carefully, her mind already analyzing the implications. "Does your grandmother work in healthcare? It would be unusual for someone to recommend wearing tights for germ protection." Emma shook her head quickly, her braids swaying with emotion. "She takes care of me because my parents work far away. She knows what's best for keeping me healthy." Linda filed this information away while considering her options. She could complete the screening without examining Emma's legs, but something about the child's extreme reaction was triggering every professional alarm she developed over 2 decades of working with children. In her experience, such intense fear of routine medical examination often indicated something more serious than simple modesty. "Your grandmother sounds like she cares about you very much," Linda said diplomatically, not wanting to challenge Emma's family relationships directly while gathering more information. "How long have your parents been working far away?" "Since I was little," Emma replied, her voice carrying a sadness that seemed too profound for someone so young. "Grandmother says they have important work that requires them to travel to places where children can't go." The vague explanation raised additional concerns. While it was certainly possible that Emma's parents worked in fields requiring extensive travel, the lack of specificity and the child's obvious sadness suggested a more complex situation. Linda made mental notes to research Emma's family background more thoroughly. "That must be hard, missing your parents," Linda said gently. "Do you get to talk to them often?" Emma's hesitation before answering was telling. "Sometimes, when they're not too busy with their important work." "That's fine, Emma. We can skip the leg examination today," Linda decided, not wanting to cause further distress while planning to follow up on her concerns through other channels. "Let me just check your arms and hands for a moment, and then we'll be all finished." As Linda examined Emma's arms, rolling up the sleeves of the child's cardigan sweater, she noticed several small, circular scars on Emma's forearms, faded but distinctive marks that made her pause. The scars were too uniform and deliberate looking to be accidental injuries, appearing instead like intentional burns that had healed over time. When Linda looked up from examining the marks, Emma was watching her intently, her dark eyes filled with a mixture of fear and resignation, as if she'd been expecting this discovery and was gauging whether Linda would react with the same anger or punishment she'd apparently experienced elsewhere. "Emma, these little marks on your arms, do you remember how you got them?" Linda asked gently, her professional training helping her maintain a calm demeanor despite the alarm bells ringing in her mind. "Accidents," Emma replied quickly, the response clearly rehearsed. "I'm clumsy sometimes. Grandmother says I need to be more careful around hot things." The explanation was delivered with the same flat tone as her previous responses, but Linda noticed Emma's breathing had quickened and her small hands were trembling slightly. The scars were too uniform and too numerous to be explained by typical childhood accidents, and their placement on Emma's forearms suggested deliberate infliction rather than accidental contact with hot objects. Linda completed the screening without further comment about the scars, making detailed mental notes to discuss her concerns with the school counselor and possibly Child Protective Services. Her years of experience had taught her that pushing too hard too fast could cause children to retreat further into protective silence, potentially making future disclosure more difficult. "All finished, Emma," Linda announced with forced cheerfulness, helping the child roll her sleeves back down. "You did a wonderful job with your screening. Your vision and hearing are perfect, And you're growing beautifully. Emma's response to the praise was minimal, a small nod and what might have been a tiny smile, but Linda noted that she seemed relieved the examination was over. As Emma gathered her small backpack and prepared to return to class, Linda made a decision that would prove crucial to the child's future. Emma, you know that my job is to help keep all the students healthy and safe, right? Linda said, crouching down to Emma's eye level. If you ever feel sick or hurt, or if you just need someone to talk to, you can always come see me. That's what I'm here for. Emma's eyes searched Linda's face for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether this offer of help was genuine or some kind of test. Even if it's not during school nurse hours? She asked quietly. Especially then, Linda confirmed. If something is wrong, day or night, you can ask any teacher to call me, and I'll come help you. That's a promise. Something in Emma's expression shifted slightly. Not quite hope, but perhaps a tiny crack in the walls she'd built around herself. She nodded once, then quietly left the clinic to return to her classroom. Over the following days, Linda found herself paying closer attention to Emma Rodriguez during her routine interactions around the school. She began timing her hallway walks to coincide with Emma's class transitions, observing the child's behavior and interactions with peers and adults. What she saw only deepened her concerns. Emma moved through the school like a ghost, present but not truly participating in the vibrant community around her. While other first graders chattered excitedly with friends, shared snacks, and engaged in spontaneous play, Emma remained isolated, always polite but never truly connected to those around her. During lunch duty the following week, Linda positioned herself where she could observe Emma's mealtime behavior. The child sat alone at the far end of a cafeteria table, methodically eating a sandwich that appeared to be precisely cut into quarters. Her lunch was elaborate, carefully arranged fruits and vegetables, a thermos of what appeared to be homemade soup, crackers arranged in neat rows, suggesting significant adult preparation and attention to detail. When a classmate accidentally knocked over Emma's water bottle while reaching for the napkin dispenser, Linda watched Emma's reaction with growing alarm. The girl's response was immediate and disproportionate. She began apologizing profusely while frantically cleaning up the spill, her movements quick and panicked as if this minor accident were a serious transgression requiring extensive damage control. "It's okay, Emma," her classmate said, obviously confused by the intensity of Emma's reaction. "It was just an accident." But Emma continued apologizing, her voice rising with distress, as she used napkins to dry every trace of spilled water from the table surface. Linda intervened, approaching the table with cleaning supplies and a calm demeanor. "No harm done," Linda said cheerfully, helping to clean the remaining water while noting Emma's continued agitation. "Accidents happen all the time in cafeterias. The table is designed to be wiped clean." Emma looked up at Linda with surprise, as if the concept of accidents being normal and easily remedied was foreign to her experience. "Grandmother says spills show carelessness and disrespect for property," she said quietly. The statement revealed volumes about the environment Emma lived in, one where normal childhood mishaps were interpreted as moral failings requiring correction. Linda made another mental note while reassuring Emma that accidents were a normal part of childhood and learning. Linda also began observing Emma's clothing choices more systematically. While other children varied their outfits according to weather, personal preference, and laundry schedules, Emma's wardrobe seemed rigidly controlled. She consistently wore long pants or dresses with thick, opaque tights, regardless of temperature or season. Even on unseasonably warm days when other children wore shorts and t-shirts, Emma remained fully covered from neck to ankles. The child's interaction with adults followed another concerning pattern. She was unfailingly polite, almost formal in her speech, and seemed to anticipate negative reactions to normal childhood behaviors. When Linda had once complimented Emma's neat handwriting during a visit to her classroom, the girl had looked genuinely surprised, as if positive feedback were an unexpected and possibly suspicious occurrence. Linda's concerns deepened during a conversation with Emma's teacher, Mrs. Kim, who had requested a consultation about the girl's classroom behavior. They met in Linda's clinic after school hours, when the building was quiet and they could speak freely without interruption. "I've been teaching first grade for 8 years," Mrs. Kim began, settling into one of the chairs in Linda's office area. And I've never had a student quite like Emma. She's academically exceptional. Her work is always perfect, completed ahead of schedule, and demonstrates understanding well beyond grade level. That sounds positive, Linda prompted, though she suspected there were complications to this academic success. It would be if it felt natural. But Emma's perfectionism seems driven by fear rather than genuine enthusiasm for learning. She's terrified of making mistakes. Mrs. Kim's expression grew troubled as she continued. Last week, she accidentally dropped her pencil during a math lesson. Instead of just picking it up like any normal child would, she started crying and asking if she was in trouble. It took 20 minutes to calm her down and convince her that dropping a pencil wasn't a punishable offense. Linda nodded grimly, this behavior fitting the pattern she'd been observing. What about her social interactions? How does she relate to other children? That's another major concern. She rarely plays with other children, claims she doesn't know how to play most games that are typical for her age group. During recess, while other kids are running around, playing tag, or using the playground equipment, Emma usually sits by herself reading or asks to help me organize classroom supplies. Does she seem lonely or content with the isolation? Mrs. Kim considered the question carefully. It's hard to tell. She's so controlled in her emotional expression. But sometimes I catch her watching other children play with this look of longing, I guess, like she wants to join them but doesn't know how or isn't allowed to. Linda found this detail particularly heartbreaking. The image of a 6-year-old who wanted to play but had somehow been taught that childhood joy was forbidden or dangerous. Have you met her grandmother? The woman who's caring for her? Mrs. Kim's expression grew even more troubled. That's interesting you ask. I've requested several parent conferences throughout the year, but the grandmother always declines, saying she's too busy to come to school for routine educational matters. The only time I've spoken with her was during Emma's enrollment at the beginning of the year, and she was Mrs. Kim paused, choosing her words carefully. Very controlling. Intimidating, actually. In what way? She provided an extensive written list of rules about Emma's care, what she could eat, specific times she was allowed to use the bathroom, instructions about not permitting her to remove any outer clothing for any reason, requirements that Emma be seated away from windows and doors. The list was 3 pages long and written like legal documentation. This information significantly escalated Linda's concerns. While some parents were certainly more specific about their children's care than others, the level of control described by Mrs. Kim suggested something far beyond normal parental involvement. Did she give explanations for these requirements? Some of them. She claimed Emma had multiple severe allergies requiring restricted diet, said she had a compromised immune system requiring constant coverage of her skin, mentioned behavioral problems that necessitated strict supervision. But when I asked for medical documentation to support these claims, she became very defensive and said she'd provide paperwork later. Nothing ever materialized. And the school administration accepted this. Mrs. Kim shifted uncomfortably. The grandmother was very persuasive. She spoke knowledgeably about children's health issues and educational law. She implied that the school could face legal consequences if we didn't accommodate Emma's special needs without medical documentation to contradict her claims. The administration felt they had to comply with her requests. Linda understood the difficult position the school had been placed in, but she also recognized classic patterns of abusive caregivers who used intimidation and false authority to control institutions that might otherwise question their treatment of children. What's your gut feeling about the situation? Linda asked, knowing that experienced teachers often developed reliable instincts about their students' home lives. I think Emma is being hurt, Mrs. Kim said quietly, finally voicing the suspicion that had been growing all year. Not just controlled or overly disciplined, but actually harmed. She flinches when adults move too quickly near her. She apologizes constantly for things that don't require apologies. And there's something about the way she talks about her grandmother. It's not love or even respect, it's fear. That evening, Linda found herself unable to concentrate on routine household tasks, her mind repeatedly returning to Emma Rodriguez and the accumulating evidence that the child was suffering abuse. She discussed her concerns with her husband Robert, whose experience as a pediatric social worker provided valuable perspective on complex family situations. The pattern you're describing is classic, Robert confirmed as they sat in their living room after dinner. Extreme control over the child's appearance and behavior, isolation from normal peer interactions, hypervigilance, perfectionism driven by fear rather than achievement motivation, and resistance to normal medical examination. These are textbook indicators of systematic abuse. But how do I prove it? The grandmother has been clever about providing explanations that sound plausible on the surface. You don't need to prove abuse to report suspected abuse, Robert reminded her. As a mandated reporter, you only need reasonable suspicion, which it sounds like you definitely have. The question is timing and approach. Linda nodded, understanding that hasty action could potentially make Emma's situation worse if it alerted the grandmother to scrutiny without providing adequate protection for the child. I think I need to create another opportunity to examine Emma more thoroughly, Linda decided. If I can document physical evidence of abuse, it will strengthen any report I make and increase the likelihood of immediate intervention. The next morning brought an opportunity sooner than Linda had expected. Emma appeared at the clinic door during first period, her small face pale and her movements more carefully controlled than usual. "Good morning, Emma," Linda greeted warmly, immediately noting the child's distressed appearance. "What brings you to see me today?" "My stomach hurts," Emma said quietly, one hand pressed against her abdomen. "And I feel dizzy." Linda guided Emma to the examination chair, noting that the child moved stiffly, favoring her right leg in a way that suggested discomfort or pain beyond the stomach issues she'd reported. "When did your stomach start hurting?" Linda asked gently, beginning her assessment with routine questions while observing Emma's posture and movement patterns. "This morning, before school," Emma's voice was barely above a whisper, and Linda noticed she was breathing more shallowly than normal. "Sometimes stomach aches can be related to other kinds of discomfort," Linda said carefully. "Are you feeling sore anywhere else? You seem like you might be uncomfortable when you move." Emma's hesitation before answering was telling. "Maybe a little. I think I slept wrong." The explanation was delivered with the same rehearsed quality Linda had learned to recognize. But this time Emma's obvious physical discomfort provided an opening for more thorough examination. "Sleeping wrong can definitely cause aches and pains," Linda agreed. "Let me check your temperature and blood pressure. And then I'd like to examine the areas where you're feeling sore to make sure nothing serious is wrong." As Linda proceeded with basic vital signs, she noted that Emma's temperature was normal, but her blood pressure was slightly elevated, possibly indicating stress or pain. Throughout the examination, Emma kept her legs pressed tightly together and avoided any motion that might cause her dress to shift or reveal her lower extremities. "Your vital signs look good," Linda reported. "But I'm still concerned about the pain you're experiencing. For me to properly assess what might be wrong, I really need to examine the areas where you're hurting. I know you've been worried about removing your tights, but as the school nurse, it's my responsibility to make sure students aren't suffering from undiagnosed injuries." Emma's breathing quickened, and tears began forming in her eyes. "I'm not supposed to. Grandmother will be very angry if she finds out." The phrase "very angry" carried undertones that confirmed Linda's growing suspicions. In her experience, children who lived in normal, healthy homes didn't express terror at the prospect of a grandparent discovering they'd received routine medical care. "Emma, what happens when your grandmother gets angry?" Linda asked gently, crouching beside the examination chair to bring herself to Emma's eye level. She teaches me lessons. So I remember to follow rules and be a good girl." "What kind of lessons?" Emma's small voice dropped to barely a whisper, and Linda had to lean closer to hear her response. "Lessons that hurt, to help me remember better." The admission sent a chill through Linda's entire body, though she maintained her professional composure. "Emma, adults should never hurt children as a way of teaching lessons. If someone is hurting you, that's not your fault. And it's not okay, no matter what they tell you. But grandmother says I need to learn that bad girls get punishments to make them good. She says my parents sent me to live with her because I was too bad for them to handle." The distorted logic of abuse was evident in Emma's explanation. The way perpetrators convinced their victims that abuse was deserved, necessary, even loving. Linda recognized the psychological manipulation designed to make Emma complicit in her own victimization by accepting responsibility for the violence inflicted upon her. "You are already a good girl, Emma," Linda said firmly, her voice carrying absolute conviction. "Nothing you could do, nothing, would make you deserve to be hurt. Good grandparents teach children through patience and kindness, not through pain." Emma's eyes widened slightly, as if this concept were revolutionary. But how else do children learn not to make mistakes? The question revealed the depth of the psychological damage Emma had endured. A child who couldn't conceive of learning and growth occurring through anything other than punishment and fear. "Children learn best when they feel safe and loved," Linda explained gently. "Good teachers and parents help children understand right from wrong by explaining things clearly, setting fair rules, and helping fix mistakes when they happen. Fear and pain actually make it harder for children to learn and grow properly." Linda could see Emma processing this information, her young mind struggling to reconcile what Linda was saying with everything she'd been taught about discipline and behavior. This internal conflict was written clearly across her expressive features, hope warring with ingrained fear, the desire to believe in safety battling against learned helplessness. "Emma, I want to help you feel better, but I need to understand what's wrong with your body. I promise that whatever I find, I'll use the information to help you, not to get you in trouble. Will you trust me?" The question hung in the air for what felt like an eternity, though it was probably only 30 seconds. Linda watched as Emma's internal struggle played out across her young features, the desperate desire for help fighting against months or years of conditioning that had taught her to hide evidence of abuse at all costs. Finally, with trembling hands that shook so violently Linda was afraid the child might not be able to manage the task, Emma slowly began rolling down her thick black tights. What Linda saw when Emma's legs were finally exposed made her struggle to maintain professional composure despite her years of experience with medical trauma. Emma's thin legs were covered with injuries in various stages of healing, creating a horrific timeline of systematic abuse that told a story no child should ever have to endure. Fresh burn marks that appeared to be from cigarettes dotted Emma's calves and thighs, some still angry and red, others beginning to scab over. Long welts consistent with belt or cord strikes crisscrossed her legs in a pattern that suggested repeated, methodical beating. Most disturbing were what appeared to be bite marks on her inner thighs, human teeth marks that had left permanent scarring. Some wounds were clearly recent, inflicted within the past few days, while others showed various stages of healing that indicated this abuse had been ongoing for months, possibly years. The systematic nature of the injuries, their deliberate placement, and their varying degrees of healing painted a picture of calculated, escalating torture inflicted on a child too young to defend herself or seek help. "Oh, Emma," Linda breathed, her voice thick with emotion and barely controlled rage. "Who did this to you? Tell me the truth. All of it." "Grandmother," Emma whispered, tears streaming down her face, as she finally spoke the truth she'd been forced to hide for so long. "When I'm bad, when I don't clean the house good enough, or when I'm too slow getting dressed, or when I cry too loud, or when I ask questions about my parents." Linda's hands shook as she documented each injury with clinical precision, photographing the evidence with the clinic's specialized camera while providing gentle reassurance to Emma. The pattern and severity of abuse was among the worst she'd encountered in her career, systematic torture disguised as discipline, inflicted on a child whose only crimes were normal childhood behaviors and natural curiosity about her absent parents. "What about these burn marks, Emma? How did your grandmother make these?" "Cigarettes," Emma replied matter-of-factly, as if this were a normal part of childhood experience. "When I'm really bad, she says the pain helps me remember lessons better. And these marks that look like bites." Emma's voice became even smaller. "When she gets really angry, she says bad children deserve to know what it feels like when animals attack. So I'll understand how dangerous the world is for girls who don't obey." Each detail Emma revealed made Linda's heart break a little more, while simultaneously fueling her determination to ensure this child would never be hurt again. The systematic nature of the abuse, the psychological manipulation used to justify it, and the clear escalation pattern all indicated that Emma was in immediate danger that would only worsen if intervention didn't occur immediately. "Emma, what your grandmother is doing is very wrong," Linda said firmly, her voice carrying absolute conviction despite the emotions threatening to overwhelm her professional composure. "No child should ever be hurt like this, for any reason. These are not lessons. This is torture, and it's against the law." "Will she go to jail?" Emma asked with a mixture of fear and hope that revealed the complexity of her relationship with her abuser. "What's most important right now is making sure you're safe," Linda replied carefully. "I'm going to call some people whose job it is to protect children who are being hurt. They're experts at making sure children are safe, and they'll know exactly what to do." "Will I get in trouble for telling?" "Absolutely not. You're being incredibly brave by telling the truth, and that's going to help a lot of people make sure you're safe from now on." Linda began gathering the supplies she would need to properly document and treat Emma's injuries. "These adults I'm calling, they deal with situations like this every day, and they know how to help children who have been hurt by people who were supposed to take care of them." The next several hours unfolded with practiced efficiency born from Linda's years of experience with suspected abuse cases. Though the severity of Emma's situation required coordination with multiple agencies and departments, she contacted Child Protective Services immediately, emphasizing the severity and immediacy of the danger Emma faced. The CPS emergency response team dispatched a caseworker within 30 minutes, recognizing that this case required immediate intervention rather than routine investigation. Linda then called the police department's specialized child abuse unit, knowing that the criminal nature of Emma's injuries would require law enforcement involvement. She also contacted the school principal, Dr. Martinez, to ensure that Emma would remain under protective supervision until authorities could implement a safety plan. Emma remained in the clinic under Linda's direct care while authorities responded, the child's emotional state fluctuating between relief at finally telling the truth and terror about what consequences her disclosure might bring. Linda provided ongoing reassurance while completing detailed medical documentation that would serve as crucial evidence in both criminal proceedings and custody determination. Detective Ana Rodriguez arrived first, her gentle manner and specialized training in child abuse cases immediately putting Emma more at ease than the child had seemed in Linda's entire acquaintance with her. Detective Rodriguez had worked with Linda on previous abuse cases and understood the delicate balance required to gather necessary information while protecting the child's emotional well-being. "Hi, Emma," Detective Rodriguez said softly, settling into a chair positioned at the child's eye level. "Nurse Linda told me you've been very brave today by telling the truth about some grown-ups who have been hurting you. I'm here because it's my job to make sure children are safe, and I need to ask you some questions about what's been happening to you." While Emma provided her account of the abuse, describing years of escalating violence disguised as discipline, social isolation enforced through fear, and psychological manipulation designed to convince her that she deserved the treatment she received, Linda completed increasingly detailed medical documentation. Emma's disclosure revealed a level of systematic abuse that extended far beyond the physical injuries Linda had documented. The child described being locked in closets for hours as punishment for minor infractions, being deprived of food for days when her household cleaning didn't meet her grandmother's standards, and being forced to stand motionless for hours while her grandmother screamed about her worthlessness and the burden she represented. Most heartbreakingly, Emma revealed that her grandmother had told her that her parents had abandoned her because she was too evil and stupid for them to love, and that only through painful discipline could she become good enough for anyone to care about her. This psychological abuse had been as systematic and damaging as the physical violence, creating a child who believed she was fundamentally unworthy of love or protection. "You've been incredibly brave telling us all of this," Detective Rodriguez assured Emma when the interview concluded. "Because you told us the truth, we can make sure your grandmother never hurts you again, and we can help you understand that everything she told you about yourself was wrong." Child Protective Services caseworker James Wilson arrived shortly after the police interview concluded, bringing with him the paperwork and authority necessary to immediately remove Emma from her grandmother's custody. His experience with emergency placements helped him explain to Emma what would happen next in terms she could understand while providing reassurance about her immediate safety. "Emma, you're not going to go home with your grandmother today, or ever again," James explained gently. We're going to find you a safe place to stay with people who know how to take care of children who have been hurt. These are special families whose job it is to help kids feel safe and loved while other adults figure out the best permanent home for them. Where will I go? Emma asked, this question carrying both hope and understandable anxiety about yet another major change in her young life. I have a family in mind who specializes in caring for children in situations exactly like yours, James replied. Their names are Maria and Carlos Fernandez, and they've been helping children for many years. They understand how to help kids feel safe again after they've been hurt by adults who were supposed to protect them. By evening, Emma found herself in the home of Maria and Carlos Fernandez, experienced therapeutic foster parents who had been caring for traumatized children for over 15 years. Their warm, child-friendly home had been specifically designed to provide comfort and safety for children recovering from abuse, featuring soft colors, natural lighting, and carefully chosen furnishings that created an atmosphere of calm security rather than institutional care. We're so happy to meet you, Emma, Maria said gently as she knelt down to Emma's eye level in the living room. We know today has been really scary and confusing, but you don't have to be afraid anymore. Our job is to help you feel safe and happy, while other adults make sure you never have to be hurt again. Emma, now wearing soft pajamas provided by the foster family instead of her constraining tights and formal dress, looked around the unfamiliar environment with cautious wonder. The house felt different from any place she'd ever lived, warm instead of cold, welcoming instead of threatening, filled with books and toys and pictures of smiling children rather than the sterile, controlled environment her grandmother had maintained. Do I have to follow special rules? Emma asked quietly, this question revealing how her entire life experience had been shaped by arbitrary punitive regulations designed to control rather than guide. Just gentle house rules that help families live together happily, Carlos replied with a warm smile, settling into a nearby chair so the conversation could continue at Emma's eye level. Things like being kind to each other, washing our hands before meals, and letting us know if you need anything. We want you to feel comfortable here, so we'll learn together what helps you feel safe and happy. What if I make a mistake? Emma asked, this question carrying the weight of years of conditioning that had taught her to fear normal human error. The question broke both foster parents' hearts, but Maria answered with steady warmth and absolute conviction. Everyone makes mistakes, sweetheart. That's how people learn and grow. When mistakes happen, we help each other figure out how to do better next time, or we fix whatever got broken, or sometimes we just laugh about it if it's silly. No one ever gets hurt in this house for making mistakes. That's a promise. Emma's eyes widened at this revolutionary concept, the idea that mistakes could be learning opportunities rather than crimes requiring punishment, that accidents could be met with understanding rather than violence. Over the following days, Emma began the gradual process of learning to live without constant fear, though her healing would clearly require extensive time and professional support. The Fernandez family, trained in trauma-informed care and experienced with children recovering from severe abuse, provided structure without rigidity, offering Emma choices she'd never been allowed to make while maintaining the consistency and security she needed to begin trusting again. Linda visited daily, both to monitor Emma's medical recovery and to witness the child's remarkable transformation. Within the first week, Emma was speaking in full sentences without the careful self-monitoring that had characterized her communication before. She laughed at silly jokes Carlos told at dinner, showed curiosity about the books that filled every room of the Fernandez house, and began displaying the natural exuberance and wonder that had been suppressed under her grandmother's cruelty. Most significantly, Emma began asking questions about how families worked, about why some adults hurt children while others protected them, about whether she would ever see her real parents again. These questions, while sometimes difficult to answer, represented crucial steps in her psychological healing, indicating that she was beginning to process her experiences and develop a more accurate understanding of relationships and safety. 2 weeks after Emma's placement, Detective Rodriguez brought news that ensured Emma's permanent safety and began providing answers to questions that had haunted the child's recovery. Isabella Rodriguez had been arrested at her home and charged with multiple counts of child abuse, child torture, unlawful imprisonment, and several other felonies. Evidence found during the search of her residence revealed a pattern of systematic abuse that had been carefully documented through photographs and written records. a horrific catalog of violence that Isabella had apparently kept as some sort of twisted achievement record. More importantly for Emma's understanding of her family history, the investigation had uncovered evidence that Emma's parents hadn't abandoned her as Isabella had claimed. Police found documentation suggesting that Emma's parents had died in a car accident when she was 3 years old, and that Isabella had assumed custody not out of family obligation but because she had identified Emma as a vulnerable target for her abusive tendencies. What this means for Emma, James Wilson explained during a meeting with Linda and the Fernandez family, is that she'll never have to see her grandmother again, and she can begin understanding the truth about her family instead of the lies she was told to justify her abuse. When they shared this news with Emma, her reaction was complex. Grief for parents she barely remembered but had been taught to believe had rejected her. Relief that their absence hadn't been punishment for her behavior, and growing understanding that the abuse she'd endured had never been her fault. "So my parents didn't send me away because I was bad?" Emma asked, this question revealing how central this belief had been to her sense of identity and self-worth. "Your parents loved you very much," Maria assured her, showing Emma photographs that investigators had found among her parents' belongings. "They didn't choose to leave you. Sometimes very sad accidents happen that take parents away from children they love. But that's completely different from parents choosing to leave because they don't love their children." Emma studied the photographs with intense concentration, seeing her parents' faces clearly for the first time in years. The images showed a young couple holding a toddler version of herself, all three beaming with obvious love and happiness, visual proof that contradicted everything Isabella had told her about being unwanted and unlovable. "They look happy with me?" Emma observed, this simple statement representing a revolutionary shift in her understanding of her worth and lovability. "They look like they adored you," Carlos confirmed, "and I bet if they could see you now, they'd be very proud of how brave you've been." 3 weeks after her rescue, Emma had begun displaying remarkable resilience and healing capacity that amazed even the experienced professionals working with her. The Fernandez family had already begun formal proceedings to adopt Emma, recognizing that she had formed strong attachments to them and that disrupting these relationships would be counterproductive to her recovery. Emma had enthusiastically embraced the idea of adoption, particularly when she learned it meant forever family, and that no one could ever separate her from people who truly cared for her well-being. The prospect of permanent belonging, of being wanted and chosen rather than merely tolerated, seemed to accelerate her healing in ways that traditional therapy alone might not have achieved. Linda was completing routine paperwork in her clinic when Emma appeared in her doorway one afternoon, now wearing bright pink leggings and a cheerful sweater, clothing that revealed rather than concealed, chosen for comfort and personal preference rather than concealment of abuse. The transformation in Emma's appearance was dramatic, but the change in her demeanor was even more remarkable. "Nurse Linda, look what I made for you." Emma approached the desk with a colorful drawing that depicted a house surrounded by flowers, with stick figures representing her new family under a bright yellow sun. In the corner of the picture, Emma had carefully written, "Thank you for saving me," in her neat first-grade handwriting. "This is absolutely beautiful, Emma," Linda said, accepting the drawing with genuine admiration while feeling tears threaten to overwhelm her professional composure. "You look so happy in this picture." "I am happy," Emma declared with the simple honesty of childhood, her voice carrying none of the careful modulation that had characterized her speech during her months of suffering. "Maria and Carlos say I'm their special girl, and they love me just because I exist, not because I'm perfect or because I follow all the rules exactly right." The profound statement revealed how much healing had already occurred, Emma understanding that love should be unconditional, freely given rather than earned through fearful compliance with arbitrary demands. "They're absolutely right," Linda confirmed, her voice thick with emotion. "You are special exactly as you are, and you deserve to be loved and protected always." As Emma skipped back to her classroom, actually skipped with the uninhibited joy that had been stolen from her but was now returning, Linda reflected on the transformation she'd witnessed. In the space of just weeks, a terrified, controlled child had become someone who could express genuine happiness, make personal choices, and trust in adult protection and care. The Fernandez family's adoption proceedings were advancing smoothly, with Emma enthusiastically participating in the process and expressing excitement about becoming Emma Fernandez permanently. The legal proceedings also served therapeutic purposes, allowing Emma to understand that adults were working specifically to ensure her safety and happiness, that she had value worth protecting, and that her future would be determined by people who prioritized her well-being above all else. During their last formal medical follow-up appointment, Emma had hugged Linda tightly and whispered, "Thank you for seeing my legs that day. Thank you for not letting grandmother keep hurting me." Such simple words, but they carried profound gratitude for the attention, persistence, and courage that had literally saved her life. Linda understood that her willingness to notice Emma's fear, to question explanations that didn't make sense, and to persist despite the child's initial resistance had been the crucial factor in transforming Emma's trajectory from continued abuse to healing and love. 6 months later, during a routine visit to Linda's clinic for a completely ordinary childhood concern, a scraped knee from playground activity that Emma had sustained while playing tag with friends, the transformation was complete. Emma bounded into the clinic wearing shorts and a t-shirt, her legs unmarked by fresh injuries, her face bright with the confidence and joy of a child who knew herself to be loved and protected. "Nurse Linda, guess what?" Emma announced proudly as Linda cleaned her minor scrape. "The adoption is final next week. I'm officially going to be Emma Fernandez, and Maria and Carlos are going to be my real parents forever and ever." The gesture of trust represented by Emma's excitement about a minor playground injury, her comfort seeking help from adults, her assumption that care would be provided rather than punishment inflicted, represented the highest possible outcome for intervention in child abuse cases. "That's the most wonderful news I've heard in a long time," Linda replied, applying a colorful bandage to Emma's knee while marveling at the complete transformation from the terrified child who had once hidden injuries under thick tights. Stories like these remind us that medical professionals and schools serve as crucial safety nets for vulnerable children, combining clinical expertise with deep compassion to identify and intervene in cases of abuse. Every day, heroes like Linda are making these life-saving discoveries through careful observation and willingness to question what doesn't seem right. But how many children are still suffering in silence, their cries for help hidden beneath layers of clothing and fear? Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed the story, give this video a like if you haven't already, and subscribe for more powerful stories of rescue and redemption.